Breaking right now, Prince Harry's allies are turning on him after his disgusting, delusional, hypocritical, and let's just say lowest of the low interview with the British Bashing Corporation on Friday. Now, look, there's some people who you would expect not to be happy, and for very good reason. Piers Morgan, for example, when he saw that Meghan had posted this new photo of Prince Harry with the children after the royal backlash, posted, "I do wish they'd stop invading their children's privacy." And that actually prompted a reply from Samantha Markle, our friend, Meghan's sister, saying, "Yeah, how cheesy to post pictures of random children from the back. Nobody knows who these children are. It's not exploitation, it's not evidence, it's not anything, because you have no faces to verify who they are. I think all of the hype is just psychotic. Nobody cares." On seeing part of the interview, our other friend, Meghan Kelly, replied to Harry, saying maybe he should use his $150 million from Spotify Netflix to pay for his own security, like every other famous person in the UK. But as I say, what is more interesting to me about this interview is the fact that there's no one out there defending it. Literally no one. Omid Scobie, that very odd-looking guy, sort of Michael Jackson wannabe, he's fallen off the face of the earth. He's no longer defending it. And the people who you would expect in the past to have been the first to beat the drum for Harry and Meghan, including Tina Brown, Chris Shipp, Tom Bradby, Aisha Hazarika, they are not only saying nothing, they are criticising Prince Harry. Now, we're going to look at some of the best reactions in just one moment and analyse with Brittany, editor of the Royal News Network. But Brittany, it is absolutely fascinating to see, isn't it, the fact that no one can defend Harry here. He is on his own. His advisors are gone. His celebrity pals are gone. Nobody thinks the way he's dealing with this is right, apart from Meghan Markle.
Yeah, you've seen sort of this shift happening actually throughout this whole year so far, that they've had a lot of people start to turn on them, like Jack Royston in Newsweek, he sort of turned on them too. And so you're getting to this point where everybody's looking at this going, "You're crazy, Harry." Like there's no other way to put it. It's like none of this is making sense. And so nobody can defend this. So everybody's just sort of turning their back or even just starting to outright criticize him, and rightly so. This whole situation, this whole drummed up thing is sort of something that Harry cannot defend. And there's so many inconsistencies in his statement, and if anybody has been paying attention to any aspect of royalty, they're like, this is not totally connecting here. And I don't think, especially when you listen to Harry's interview and he talks about basically the world should pay for his security. Everybody's sitting there with their taxpayer dollars, inflation and everything going, no, nobody wants to pay for this, Harry. Nobody wants to pay for your security. You have plenty of money. No other celebrity is demanding that the world covers their security all the time, but you. And I think when it comes to that, especially, I think for Americans, it's a complete and utter turnoff. And I'm sure to the rest of the world too. Nobody wants to pay for this guy. He has plenty of money. He can do it on his own.
Brittany, I think the other reason why it's so difficult to defend him, though, even for the people who do think that he deserves security, and there are some of them, is the fact that his claims are now conspiratorial. Now, I actually don't like calling people conspiracy theorists because over the past few years, I've been called a conspiracy theorist, and on virtually every single issue, I have proven to be true. So I don't use that term very often, Brittany, because I think it can be used as a slight and a slur against people who are actually trying to reveal truth. So let me just say that I think Harry is going a little bit insane. He's becoming a total delusionist. He's becoming someone with Stockholm syndrome because he's believing everything that Meghan Markle is telling him, even though to the world we can see that these lies are just insane. So let me just show you one part of the interview where Prince Harry claims that the royal family were not only knowingly putting him in harm's way, which is crazy. By the way, the thought that anyone within the royal family wanted Prince Harry dead is like utterly nuts, not backed up by any evidence. That is a conspiracy theory, I'm sorry. And frankly, anyone outside the royal family certainly wouldn't want that, because they would know that it would bring them a whole load of hell and a whole load of criticism. So that is rubbish. It's completely untrue. But then he goes one step further, Brittany, and says that they were purposefully putting him in harm's way to then try and force him back into the royal family. Now, you know, Brittany, I did more reporting than anyone over this time. I broke the story of Megxit. The idea that anyone within the royal family wanted Prince Harry to return after 2020 is for the birds. They were relieved at that point because they knew things had gone so badly wrong. Well, you haven't received one, Harry, because you left the royal family. Now, Tina Brown, former editor of Vanity Fair, went on the British Bashing Corporation. Remember, in the past, she had actually been an ally of Harry and Meghan, not in recent months. But what's quite telling as well about Tina Brown's criticism is that she was close to Princess Diana, friends with Princess Diana, including when Princess Diana lost her security. She thinks Harry is still trying to get over the fact that Megxit was just a disaster, but he can't admit it. So right. All of that analysis was spot on, Brittany. And if he wanted any type of reconciliation, he had to show that he was prepared to admit that he was wrong with lots of the criticisms he made of the royal family. Instead, Brittany, he said again that he thinks members of the royal family wanted him dead. Well, I'm sorry, if you're starting at that point, there's no way to get to a reconciliation. Just say sorry. But he is such an egotist. He is such an arrogant man. And he is so stubborn that there's no way he'd do that.
I mean, Tina is very right there. He can't admit the original mistake, which was Megxit. And in regards to security, what they were explaining to him was basically cause and effect. So you caused X and the effect is Y. And so all of us know it's not as common anymore, but if you have a company car and you leave that company, you don't get to keep the company car unless you start paying for it yourself. That's how this works. It's not a difficult concept. And so they were simply telling him, if you make this decision, it's going to cause us to make this decision. And he's still mad about that. And what you see as well, the Times was very apt. They had a source close to Charles that said that basically that Harry is always seeing conspiracies when things don't go his way. And we totally see this play out. Things were not going to go his way with this particular situation. And they were just trying to explain that to him. But he was so arrogant. He was so egotistical. He was so high on Meghan Markle's Hollywood delusions that he just went along with everything. And now it's all biting him in the behind, and he's just continuing to blame everybody else except for him with going along with his wife's whims. That's how they're in this situation now. And I imagine he's probably a pretty bitter, angry, miserable man at most of the time. I don't think he's a particularly happy person, if he ever was. But I think the whole situation is worse now.
Totally right. Totally right. Now, then I found another conversation on Times Radio even more instructive. I'll tell you why. There've been two absolutely slavish allies of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle over the past 5 years operating in the British mainstream media. And they are Chris Shipp of Woke ITV and a woman called Aisha Hazarika, who's a Labour peer. But if you look at this picture here, she's actually sitting next to Prince Harry. She was brought into the fold. She presented a travelist event. And at every turn, Brittany, Aisha Hazarika and Chris Shipp have found a way to defend Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They've become effectively client journalists, a bit like Omid Scobie, but operating from a more credible space because they're on more credible platforms. I've actually found a lot of their reporting inexcusable, if I'm totally honest, because I think they have defended the indefensible. Certainly, Prince William has been very disgusted by the way that Woke ITV decided to side with Prince Harry and Meghan despite very obvious lies. So they spoke on Times Radio, where Aisha Hazarika presented a show. And even though they're not talking about this situation honestly, like you and I, it's still a turning point. And I know royal watchers and people who have followed the story closely will understand it's a turning point. Because when you lose Aisha Hazarika and Woke ITV's Chris Shipp, Prince Harry and Meghan, you've lost everyone. There are no allies in the British media at all now. So let's have a look at part of their conversation. This is when they first both decided to criticize Prince Harry for speaking about his father's cancer.
Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes.
So not a word in Harry and Meghan's defense, which is very, very unusual for Chris Shipp. If you've watched any of his reporting on Woke TV over the years, he's always the first to jump in and provide cover for things that I think Harry and Meghan should have been utterly criticized for. Then this is the moment where Aisha Hazarika turns on her mate Harry. So Brittany, they're using, I guess I would say, quite diplomatic language, but they're Prince Harry and Meghan's biggest media allies in the United Kingdom. Not one word of defense. Wasn't that fascinating?
I mean, it really is interesting to see sort of this fall happen. And again, I really do think it's actually been throughout this entire year so far that we've seen a lot of the media start to turn. But when you listen to them, it's sort of, what they're saying is number one, he's sort of going after his father who has cancer. And for those who have experienced cancer within their family, there's an aspect of that that's sort of, kind of offensive. And then as time goes on too, you just get the sense from them that this has just gone on way too long. At this point, it's an obvious state issue that Charles can't really intercept in. And so I think people are coming to this reality and awareness more and more of that Harry is just simply delusional. And there's only so much where you can get on the crazy train. And I think people are starting to slowly get off it because they're like, oh, this is not going the way that we wanted to. And to be attached to Harry is to be attached to the insanity. And I think people are starting to, even their staunchest allies are starting to back away. Because we also know somebody maybe in our family who will talk on social media and share the family's dirty laundry. And everybody kind of doesn't like that either. So Harry is really going down this path where he's starting to offend a lot. And I think people are noticing more and more of the lies and more that Harry is the paranoid, crazy side. Even the polls are showing that. There's less and less sympathy for Harry the longer this goes on. He's clearly not moving on. And everybody's like, okay, you've aired your grievances. Now look to the future. And Harry's just constantly harping on the past.
Constantly. Absolutely constantly. And it actually posed another fascinating question and exchange between Aisha Hazarika and Chris Shipp, where she's trying to be diplomatic, and what she's looking for is an excuse for Prince Harry. So she's like, who's advising them, hoping that Chris Shipp is going to say, oh yeah, they've got to stop listening to this crazy woke American PR agency. But all Chris Shipp can say is, it's up to them. They're doing what they want to do. It's really instructive. Tim, Brittany. Tim and Meghan against the world at this point, because no one worth half their salt would be recommending this strategy.
No, and we've heard this before from reports, especially in the American media within like the last 6, 7, 8 months, is that they will get good advice and then ignore it. And we've seen this time and time again play out endlessly, where they are given particular pieces of advice, they tend to ignore it, and then things blow up in their face. And I think most even American PR people would go, oh no, this was a terrible interview, because really what Harry is doing is emotional manipulation. And people, especially if they realize that you are trying to manipulate them and that you are saying something that's simply not true, people are going to have a very negative response to that. And that is definitely what we are seeing play out in the media at this point. It's sort of becoming indefensible. And Harry keeps thinking if he sort of tries this emotional blackmail on the country of the United Kingdom and his father and everything, that he will get his way. And it's just screaming that no, this is just not going to happen. And Harry just needs to move on, and he just simply can't. And he's just, anytime somebody tells him to do A, he does B every single time. That's both him and Meghan. And we've seen just epic disasters from a PR perspective for years from them, when they could have listened to sound advice and they go in an opposite direction.
I also thought Melanated Mona on X made quite a good point about this, because they wrote, Harry doesn't understand that threatening your father using the grandkids only works when that father has no other grandkids, pointing to the fact, Brittany, that actually, thank goodness, he does have these very strong and positive relationships and does get to see on a regular basis Prince George, Princess Beatrice, and Prince Louis. Now, of course, I'm sure he would also love to see Prince Archie and Lilibet, but I do think, there's a point there, put it that way, because most parents yearn to have grandkids, but if they do have them provided by one side of the family, I don't know, does it make it a little bit easier? I thought it was a fair point anyway.
I mean, it's an interesting perspective to consider, but I mean, I'm sure Charles would love to see his other grandchildren. And again, how does it make Harry and Meghan look to keep them from him? It makes them look really cold, really terrible, and just absolutely bitter towards him when he obviously has a very good relationship with the Waleses kids. And so it just seems to be that it's an absolute effort on Harry and Meghan's part to really try to blackmail Charles, going, if you don't give us what we want, you won't see the grandkids. And so he does probably lean more towards the Waleses just simply because they are there, they are present. But I'm sure as well he would love a relationship with Archie and Lilibet. And just think of Harry in, let's say, a couple years, what happens to Charles? And he gets ill, and then Harry never makes amends and there's no reconciliation. His kids don't know his grandfather. Harry will burden himself and his children with a lifetime of regret over just simple hubris. If he just could let it go and sort of try to make amends privately instead of just trying to demand publicly to get reconciliation, then he may be able to salvage a relationship with his father, probably not as much his brother. But at this point, Harry is just too stubborn to see reality here. And he claims, my father has cancer. I don't know how much time he has left, but he obviously clearly is not making any effort to make sure his children see his father either. So he's an utter hypocrite there.
And Brittany, we are getting some great moments from Charles's grandsons, including at the VE Day celebrations from Prince George and Prince Louis. Louis cheeky, and we love that, like Harry used to be. So you've got to watch this moment. So you'll see that George, it's windy, so George plays with his hair and he's just sort of putting it off his face. And then Louis mocks him, and look at that death stare. Let's just look at that once more, Brittany, because it's so cute.
Oh, that's so awesome.
I just love the death stare from George, like, don't you embarrass me, matey boy. Brilliant. And the point is, Charles gets to spend those lovely moments, doesn't he? Now, Brittany, Harry going to Vegas at this point, like, these are not the headlines you want. Surely, what are we to expect? None of this, I imagine, right? He's going to be careful this time.
Oh, man, we will see. But that is just sort of a funny story. And again, he's going there on Archie's birthday. So I'm curious if he's flying there and back in a day or not, because he made a big old fuss about having to get home for Archie's birthday for his father's coronation. So now 2 years later, he purposely misses his son's entire birthday. You just got to wonder, but hopefully no antics in Las Vegas this time, although it wouldn't be a surprise either. But I would imagine instead of a bit cheeky, I would imagine they would be a bit more angrier outbursts compared to what happened before. So we shall see.
He's just an angry man, isn't he? Yes, Prince Harry.
Yes.
In Vegas, part 2. But as I say, I think, given he knows what Meghan's like, the guy's going to be very, very careful.
Let's start with the BBC interview itself. Harry's latest appearance once again brought his relationship with the royal family into public view, and that is precisely where the controversy begins. For years, Harry has argued publicly about security, family relationships, media treatment, and his position within the monarchy. But every time he discusses these issues publicly, another question inevitably follows. Does speaking about the family make reconciliation easier, or does it make reconciliation almost impossible? That is the dilemma surrounding Harry now. Whatever his intentions may have been, critics argue that another highly public discussion about private family matters risks reopening wounds that the royal family may have preferred to leave closed. And when the person you're trying to reconcile with is your own father, publicly discussing the dispute is unlikely to make the process any simpler. There is another issue here that cannot be ignored. Harry's position within the royal family is dramatically different from the one he occupied before stepping down as a working royal. He is no longer surrounded by the same network of royal colleagues, advisors, relatives, and institutional support. Instead, he lives thousands of miles away from the center of the monarchy and has built a completely separate life in California. That separation may have given Harry greater independence, but it has also created distance between him and his family. Prince William remains firmly focused on his future role as king. King Charles has his own responsibilities and enormous pressures, and the wider royal family has continued with its duties. So where exactly does Harry fit into that picture? That is becoming increasingly difficult to answer. Imagine trying to repair a family relationship while the entire world is watching. Every conversation becomes a headline. Every sentence becomes a news story. Every criticism becomes another source of resentment. And every interview creates the possibility that something said publicly could be interpreted as another attack. That is the trap Harry appears to find himself in. The more he explains his position publicly, the more attention the dispute receives. And the more attention it receives, the harder it becomes for the family to quietly resolve their differences. This is why critics are asking whether Harry's media strategy is ultimately working against the reconciliation he says he wants. Then there is Prince William. Harry's relationship with his elder brother is arguably even more complicated. The two brothers were once famously close. They shared the experience of losing their mother at a young age. They grew up under enormous public pressure. And for years, William and Harry were presented as the future of the monarchy together. That image has now disappeared. William's priorities are fundamentally different from Harry's. He is preparing to become king and is increasingly focused on the long-term future of the institution. Harry, meanwhile, has established a life outside that institution. Those two paths have taken the brothers in completely different directions. And the question now is whether they can ever find enough common ground to rebuild the relationship they once had. So, is reconciliation still possible? Technically, yes. Families fall out. Families reconcile. And royal families are still families. But reconciliation between Harry and the royal family would require enormous trust on both sides. Harry would need to accept that some things may never change. The royal family would also need to decide whether they are willing to reopen a relationship that has already produced years of public controversy. There would need to be private conversations rather than public negotiations. There would need to be restraint. And above all, there would need to be a genuine willingness to leave the past behind. Without that, reconciliation risks becoming another chapter in the ongoing public drama. So, after this latest BBC controversy, the Sussex story appears to be reaching another crossroads. Harry remains determined to tell his side of the story. His critics remain convinced that public interviews only deepen the divide. And Meghan continues to stand beside him as his closest personal ally. But if Harry genuinely wants peace with his family, the next move may need to look very different from the ones we've seen before. Less publicity, less confrontation, less discussion of private disagreements, and much more private conversation. Because eventually, the question will not be about who won the argument. It will be about whether Harry and his family are prepared to put the argument down altogether. What do you think? Has Harry's latest BBC interview made reconciliation with the royal family even harder, or is there still a genuine path back for him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more royal news, commentary, and analysis.